Greece, a country of whitewashed houses, cobalt sea, and myths that became the foundation of all European culture. For a tourist, it is a dream, a postcard image where life seems to flow slowly, where every day begins with a cup of strong frappe and the sound of the wind playing with olive branches. But for those who live here, this picture increasingly turns into an illusion. The facade is deceptive, and behind it lies a reality that makes life in Greece almost impossible. When you look at the statistics, Greece seems like a country that has been through hell. The debt crisis that began in 2009 not only destroyed the economy, but also left deep scars on society. Youth unemployment in some years reached 60%. Think about it, 6 out of 10 young people could not find work. Even now, when the crisis is officially over, the numbers remain grim. Many university graduates pack their suitcases and leave for Germany, the Netherlands, or the United Kingdom, because here, their knowledge and labor are simply not needed. And yet, it is not only about the economy. Greece is a constant contradiction between a lifestyle that's supposed to be simple and joyful and a system that literally drains people of their strength. State bureaucracy is like a separate monster from mythology, with dozens of heads, each demanding a certificate, a signature, or a stamp. To open a business or even just register something minor, you must pass through a real labyrinth with no Ariadne's thread. Locals joke that if you decide to become an entrepreneur in Greece, either you are bored with life or you are a masochist. We should not forget about taxes. At first glance, they may not seem catastrophic, but if you dig deeper, you find that the tax burden suffocates the middle class. Imagine a doctor, an engineer, or the owner of a small shop. Formally, they earn well, but half of their income goes to the state. The combination of taxes, fees, and mandatory contributions makes a person not the master of their destiny, but a slave of the system. And this is without even considering corruption, which, like something eternal, continues to permeate all levels of government. Then there are the prices. One would think that a country on the periphery of Europe should be cheap, but no, the cost of products, especially imported ones, is often higher than in Germany or France. Housing rents in Athens and Thessaloniki have skyrocketed. The reason is simple: Airbnb and the influx of tourists. Apartments that used to be rented to Greeks have been turned into short-term rentals for foreigners. As a result, locals are forced to spend most of their salary just to keep a roof over their heads. And here arises the question, where is that sweet life that millions of foreigners dream of? The postcard image of sunny islands turns into a daily struggle for survival. Islanders often face another problem: lack of access to basic medical services. Hospitals are closing or working on the brink, specialists are in catastrophic shortage, and reaching the mainland for treatment means spending huge amounts of money and time. All this adds to a general feeling of injustice. Greeks are emotional people with a rich history and a sense of dignity. But it is precisely this dignity that suffers most. When you see that your work is devalued, that your future is limited by boundaries you did not choose, despair arises. And it is despair that drives hundreds of thousands of Greeks to emigrate. In recent years, the country has lost a significant part of its young and educated population. This brain drain weakens Greece even further, but the saddest part lies elsewhere. Even those who stay often live with the feeling that life is passing them by. Here you often hear the same phrase: Greece is a wonderful country for vacation, but a terrible country to live in. This is not an exaggeration, but a cry from the heart. Tourists see beauty, while residents see a wall of problems surrounding them every day. It is in this contradiction that the paradox of modern Greece is born. On the outside, a fairy tale; on the inside, harsh reality. And the question, why has life here become impossible, stops being rhetorical, and it becomes a subject for conversation that can no longer be postponed. If in the first part we spoke about crises, bureaucracy, and the economy, now we need to look deeper into the very fabric of everyday life. Because the economy is numbers, but life is the air people breathe, and this air in Greece is becoming heavier. Let's start with work. Even those who have found a job can rarely afford to relax. The system of contracts and temporary employment has turned labor into a lottery. Today, you have a job, tomorrow you don't. Employers always find a reason to cut costs on employees. Many are forced to accept payment in envelopes because otherwise they simply cannot survive. But this scheme has a downside: no social guarantees, no pensions, no health insurance. Now imagine that you are a doctor or an engineer. You studied for many years, invested strength, money, and hopes, but in the end you receive a salary that barely covers doctor's rent and groceries. In Germany or France, such specialists are respected and in demand. In Greece, they often become slaves of the system, and this is not an abstract statement. Thousands of doctors have long since left the country, leaving hospitals understaffed. New ones come, but not for long. They too leave. It turns into a vicious circle. The best leave, and those who cannot or do not want to leave stay behind. But the crisis in Greece is not only about jobs and salaries, it is also about what is called quality of life. Tourists think Greeks are happy. They sit in cafes, drink coffee for hours, and talk. But this is only the surface. For many, cafes become the only way to escape from reality, where bills pile up, where utility costs rise faster than you can pay, where opportunities are limited. Electricity and gas prices are a separate issue. The energy crisis of recent years has hit Greece especially hard. Many families simply do not turn on the heating in winter because the bills are unbearable. Homes are heated with small heaters or not heated at all. People wrap themselves in blankets and joke that they have become used to living in conditions worthy of Spartans. But in fact, this is no joke, but a reality that humiliates and drains strength. To this are added traffic and transportation. In Athens, traffic is eternal chaos. Drivers break the rules, parking is a nightmare, public transport is worn out and often late. Imagine a morning when you need to get to work. In a city where life is already hard, the commute itself becomes a test. The metro is overcrowded, buses are packed, taxis are expensive. Every trip feels like a small battle for space. But perhaps the most painful part of Greek life is the feeling that the system does not care about the individual. Schools are overcrowded, teachers are overworked and demotivated. Universities suffer from a lack of funding, and the best students go abroad to study. The healthcare system, once the pride of the country, is on the verge of collapse. Waiting times in hospitals can last weeks or even months. If you cannot afford a private doctor, you risk being left without help. And here, we approach the psychological dimension of the problem. When a person faces such difficulties every day, they begin to lose faith in the state, in justice, in the future. This feeling permeates today's Greece. People keep smiling, keep celebrating, dancing, organizing family dinners because that is part of their culture. But behind this outward joy lies exhaustion and fear. It is no surprise that many Greeks talk about depression as the illness of a generation. Young people who should be building the country's future instead live in anxiety and uncertainty. Every second one is thinking about emigration, and this has already become the norm. Families no longer argue about whether to leave or stay. The only question is when and where. Greece is turning into a country that pushes away its own citizens. It cannot keep those who want to work, create, and grow, and the most frightening thing is that this sense of hopelessness has become universal. It unites people more than any national idea. People understand that life here is not a dream but a struggle for each day. And then we return again to the question raised in the first part. Why has it become impossible to live here? Because every morning a person wakes up with the feeling that they must fight for what in other countries is taken for granted, for decent work, for medical care, for a roof over their head, for the chance not to live in debt. When we talk about the impossibility of living in Greece, it is important to understand that it is not only about external circumstances, but also about the inner feelings of people. The economy may recover, taxes may change, crises may eventually subside, but the loss of trust and faith in one's own country is a wound that takes the longest to heal. Greeks are a people with an ancient history. They know how to survive. They endured wars, occupations, dictatorships, and again found the strength to rise. But the modern reality is different now. The enemy is not a specific force, but the system itself, created by the hands of the state. And when a person feels that they are fighting not for the future, but merely for survival, they make the simplest choice. They leave. And here lies the main paradox. The country that gave the world philosophy, democracy, and the idea of harmony has lost harmony in the lives of its own citizens. It is a place to vacation, but increasingly difficult to live in.